Welcome, everyone, to the 30-minute Midas touch from beautiful Dyersburg, Tennessee at the Herb Welsh WrestlePlex. Now, here is pound for pound and inch for inch, the best of the best in professional wrestling today. A wrestling genius worth his weight in gold. The Golden Boy, Greg Anthony.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 30-minute Midas touch. I am your host, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony. And with me, as always, is my co-host, Maximum Overdrive, Mark Tipton.
Maximum Overdrive. I like that. And I would have to admit, this one, I don't exactly see where you're coming at me with this one, but I look forward to finding out what it is, because I know these names often involve the subject matter, and I can't wait to find out how this one fits in. But this week's edition of the 30-Minute Midas Touch podcast, I get to indulge myself in some things that I like to talk about, and the Golden Boys agreed to go along with me on this, being the gracious host that he is. I love looking at the current events going on in professional wrestling, what's going on, and then looking at it with a historical lens and what's good and bad, and what can we take from it as people who love this thing that I refer to. You can say art form, but whatever you want to call it, this thing we love. So we're going to talk about current events, but I do not want to be accused of burying the lead, and I do not intend to, because for me as a fan, and this is where, I'm going to speak as a fan here, and you may can hear the enthusiasm in my voice as I get to talk about this subject. This week, on AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite, the opening segment featured a verbal confrontation. Not a single bump was taken by anyone, unless you count MJF as he left the ring. He did drop to the mat and roll out of the ring at the end. That's about as close as they got. However, within this promo segment, which is, what we need to refer to it as, I think they did something very effective. That is really good professional wrestling. It's good professional wrestling business, storytelling, and all these things. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to critique it and tell me if I'm way off base on this.
Well, you're not way off base. Well, the thing is too, your moniker this week, is kind of indicative of this, because everyone's talking about it. Everyone's in maximum overdrive over the fact for Maxwell
Jacob Friedman.
Yes. So, this MJF Punk thing has been on. Everyone's been raving about it. I didn't see it as it happened. People just started raving about it, and I had to check it out for myself just to see what all the hoopla was about. I know it came across really well, and most people are very positive about it. My issue with it is it was pretty much the entire thing was about WWE. They spent the entire time name dropping John Cena and Triple H and The Miz and Pipe Bomb and everything else. It was an AEW promo, but they spent more time talking about WWE than they did AEW. And that's just professional wrestling, and selling 101 is, sell your own product. You know what I mean?
All right, that's fair enough. I do want to, on that subject, I was coming at this very differently. I was considering this promo something that young wrestlers around the country would study for years to come. So I'm obviously coming at this from a very different viewpoint and I'll try to explain why I was so enthusiastic about this promo. But let's just deal with your point off the top, which is a fair point, because there were a tremendous number of references to WWE. And but I will say this: when you're basically talking with CM Punk, he came back in August, so we're just a few months. He's had a handful of matches. If you're going to have a conversation that is really it was really based around CM Punk. It was kind of an attack and CM Punk then defending himself, so to speak. And if you're going to do that, can you really do that and talk about that subject without discussing WWE?
Yeah. I mean, there's always... I use this as an example. When we wrestled in Houston, I cut a promo by all indications, that was very racist. But I never said anything that you couldn't say on daytime television, right? I said those people instead of whatever, you know, word that could obviously get me in a lot of trouble and stuff like that.
Well, certainly.
So what you do is you talk about WWE without actually talking about WWE. Does that make sense? Like you don't actually name drop and give it, lead the breadcrumbs all the way to WWE as it is, but you just roundabout talk about it. You know what I mean? Without actually putting them over.
Okay, well, I guess that's where I saw things differently. You viewed it as well. You said putting over WWE. I didn't. I did not. It did not come across to me that way. Let me say it this way. I thought it was kind of an opportunity to use those aspects of CM Punk's past as a way to, obviously these are things because he went home for 7 years for a reason, and let me say, if you're the character MJF, obviously you want to try to get in this guy's head. You want to try to strike at him as best you can. So this is kind of in ring perspective. Does it not make sense that you're going to attack? And in an AEW audience, this is an audience that knows full well everything that happened to CM Punk, particularly because this was done in Chicago. They can probably recite, verbatim many of the things that were said. There may be people there that can recite the pipe bomb by, may have it committed to memory. I don't, although I did admire that pipe bomb quite a bit. And so by striking at those things, does it make sense within there that, hey, you're MJF, where are you going to strike him at? Well, you're going, and he did. Now, CM Punk referred to it as low-hanging fruit, kind of minimize it. But he struck at the failures of UFC, the being second best to John Cena and Triple H. Those are things that, would really get inside the head of CM Punk if that's what you were attempting to do in your promo.
Yeah, but in wrestling, it's not. In wrestling, your job is to build up your opponent and then tell why you're still going to beat them. You know what I mean? So saying that he got his ass kicked in UFC doesn't help your cause, because if he kicks your ass, then you're a bigger pussy than he is. And then as far as playing second banana to Cena, why would you point that out? He was we've talked about it before. He was legitimately the biggest star in wrestling at a certain point in time. You know what I mean? That's what they need to focus on. And I know you don't see it as putting WWE over, but well, for instance, the Miz line. You're a more famous.
The Miz, that to me, that was the best line of the.
You're a more famous. You're a less famous Miz. Now think about that for a minute.
Right.
Less famous Miz.
Right.
Meaning the Miz is what?
More famous than
exactly. He's a bigger star because he's on the other brand.
Well, he's a bigger star. And he's been around longer. He has more national, and he has his own reality television show. He makes movies. Well, all these things.
Yeah, and you're putting all that over.
No, the way that struck to me is you have a heel with a tremendous ego. In this promo, he spent a great deal of time saying, "Well, you drop pipe bombs, I've dropped nukes. Well, now you're, now you've stepped in the ring you're getting on the stick with me." Just a very inflated ego. Probably the most. It's one thing, and I will say I admire MJF in what he does. Mm-hmm. We have often talked about the concept of the cool heel.
Yeah.
MJF to me is not a cool heel.
Like I said before, I like 80% of what MJF does. I don't agree with the overall cussing that he does a lot of times.
Sure.
And some things in his matches are kind of questionable. Like I don't the hokey kind of stuff he does sometimes in the matches. But for the most part, yes, he's trying to be a heel.
Right.
And the thing about it is I don't think he's actually getting quote unquote heat, like real heat. But he's getting the heat because we're gonna play along with him because he's heel. Does that make sense? He's not. I'm gonna get stabbed on the way to the ring, or actual heat where they're like, this motherfucker. They're like, okay, we get it. You're the heel, so we're gonna. And we love that you say that back to us. We're gonna play along with you. And I used to have that problem too when I was coming up. I was heel, but people kind of played with it. Like they knew I was heel. I didn't want to be cheered, so we kind of played with it back and forth. But I really wanted to be the vicious. I want to see this motherfucker get his ass kicked.
Okay. Well, see, and I think that's a critique and something that could be leveled at pro wrestling in general right now. We have to deal with the fact that there is a level of understanding among the audience, and in particular among the AEW audience. I would venture to say that the average AEW fan is more in tune with kind of the backstage goings on and those things than even the average WWE fan would.
So they think.
Well, yeah, they think they are.
Yeah, right.
Or they make the effort to.
Right, and that's part of the reason I've always said that AEW is going to have a glass ceiling, because they're placating to that particular niche. You understand? Like, if they broaden their horizons a little bit, it would be a lot better.
That would be a tangent. That this is something that I've thought about quite a bit, because I've heard this conversation several times, and it's something that I have not found convincing because of the world in which we live.
Well, okay. They know we're going to watch.
Right.
Because we're two big wrestling fans.
Yes.
We've watched everything for the last 40 years.
Certainly.
Right? So they're going to get us regardless. They're going to have us in the back pocket regardless. And you know it, you can cringe all you like, but you know it's true. No matter how bad they do it, we're still going to keep up. We're still going to know what's going on. We're going to tune into WrestleMania to see what's going on. I mean, it's just the way it is. We're wrestling fans. You know what I mean? So when you're trying to expand that and you're trying to become bigger than that, then you're going to need those people that maybe they only watch wrestling once a year on WrestleMania. Maybe they only only go to a wrestling show when it's 30 minutes away from their house. You know what I mean? Like there's several different things.
All right. Well, let me say where I'm coming from on this, and I think that is a reasonable thing. My basic point. Well, let me start with the overall point. In our society, entertainment has become diffused and scattered in many ways. If you look at the music industry, movies, television, whatever, in the music industry, there used to be such a thing as top 40. Now in all honesty, that everybody kind of knew what the top 20 or 10 songs in the country were. I don't think that's true anymore. There are so many ways that we consume music, thanks mostly to the internet. And with movies and television, all these streaming services have sprung up. There's programming coming from all over, and getting, what's considered a hit on Netflix as far as the number of viewers it gets, pales in comparison to what used to be hits, say in the 90s. When there was a hit show in the 90s, the audience it drew versus what's considered a hit on a streaming service or some other venue is much smaller now.
Okay, so you probably have to explain this again so I can understand.
Okay.
So what is your basic point that technology has changed professional wrestling?
Right, and so because often I hear people immediately, the immediate comparison is the television ratings that were attained during the Attitude Era, when there would be X million of people watching Raw. And now they get something less than a third of what they were getting at that time.
Yeah, at least. I mean,
and maybe more.
But it's all within context too. I mean, we understand context, but it's like, because if you look at all those territory televisions, they all did 20-30 share. You know what I mean? Because they were in markets that there was 3 channels.
Okay.
Both of them had news on.
Exactly.
And then one had wrestling, and most people watched wrestling. So that helped with that. So you can't. That's what I'm saying. Like, you can't really compare that to that necessarily. But I mean, there's definitely less wrestling fans today than there have been historically.
And so that's what I'm getting. For instance, this promo, I first watched it on YouTube. I didn't watch it live. The first place I saw something mentioned about it, and I saw it had been loaded up on their YouTube page relatively quickly after it happened. And so I watched it for the first time on YouTube. And now I did go back and watch it. I had the recorder going, and I went back because I like to watch the show in its entirety.
Yeah.
And I did go back and watch it on television, but at that time I wasn't able to be in front of the television. And I think there's a lot of people that consume wrestling in different ways, and we may not be able to measure all the people that consume it. And so if you don't, I guess, and the other thing I want to get at is, even if you don't draw the same numbers, what I don't want to do is, as a consumer, I'm customer here, On more than one occasion, I have felt like the WWE is telling me to go away. We don't care about you. We take you for granted. And that phrase where we've got those people, I'm those people. And I've heard we've got those people over and over again.
Yeah.
And maybe I will keep up with what's going on. But for instance, they're going to be in Memphis on December 6th. I will not be there.
Yeah.
I've already decided, based upon the Raws that I've seen recently, I have no desire to spend money and take time off work to travel to watch that stuff. Now, there are some events coming up next year that I'm not, going back and forth on. But there was a time where missing an opportunity to attend Raw was a ridiculous notion. If Raw comes within reasonable distance of me, I'm going to be there.
Yeah, and that's primarily to the fact that they've strayed away from professional wrestling and started doing all the other shit.
Exactly.
But and that's what I'm saying. Like, you can still broaden the horizon and keep you happy and keep me happy, and still get new fans.
Yes.
If you do it a correct way, and I think that's what I'm talking about. As far as just the overall concept that there is we know who the weekly wrestling fans are. The ones that are going to watch everything, buy everything, that kind of thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, like, to me, it's, if in any business, if you owned a gas station, and the same 20 people came in every morning to buy coffee, you know what I mean? Are you going to try to advertise to those 20 people? No, you're gonna try to get 20 more new people to come in. You know what I mean?
But you might offer frequent customer rewards and acknowledge and appreciate that, as opposed to,
agree.
For instance, NXT 2.0, which I consider to be a metaphorical middle finger to fans like me.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's really what it is, and I got that message very clearly.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that WWE has been out of touch for years, and
that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I completely understand that thing, and to me, like, there's a way to broaden professional wrestling to get your maximum people, and then there's a way to broaden it to where you're alienating your core audience. Right, and that's what they've been doing. They've been alienating their core audience. Now, their goal is obviously to keep your core audience, and then gradually add wrestling fan after wrestling fan after wrestling fan, and turn maybe some of those kids into me and you, or we're in our 40s, still talking about this stuff.
Well, because those guys who have been long-term fans might bring some other fans in with them. Word of mouth is a thing.
Yeah.
For instance, the first wrestling matches I attended were at the local community college. The Memphis wrestling came through here. My parents are not big fans of professional wrestling at all. It's something I'm interested in. But I had a friend whose dad was. And so when they came up here, he would take me. Sometimes his son didn't go. There was one occasion where I went, he took me. It was something he was interested in, and he took me, even though his son, for whatever reason, I don't remember why I didn't go. And I appreciate that fella.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I wouldn't have had the chance to attend and see. Bobby Eaton, among others, was there. There was the Sheep Herders and Superstar Bill Dundee, and I think he was tag teaming with Steve O at that time. They had a match with the Sheep Herders. I think it's what amounted to a street fight, but this is many moons ago.
Yeah.
So, but those things do stick with my memory, and I appreciated him. And appealing to those fans, they can be your best marketing, or at least a marketing arm for your company.
Yeah, and the same thing. I almost have the exact same story. Like my the first show I ever went to was an NWA show at the Mid-South Coliseum, which it was supposed to be Flair and Funk on top, but Funk was injured, I think, and it was Flair and Dick Slater. But I got to see Sting and Muda and the Steiners and Skyscrapers and Ron Simmons and Lex Luger and Eddie Gilbert and a bunch of other guys. But then my first local event, like here in Dyersburg, my best friend at the time, his dad knew we liked wrestling, and he took us to the Armory to see. And the first main event I ever saw here locally was Mr. Paradise versus Pretty Boy James.
Oh, all right.
And I left that thinking they were the two of the greatest things I'd ever seen in my life. You know what I mean? Because I was a kid.
Right.
And they were to me, and I tell this story all the time, like, as a kid, I didn't know the difference between, say, a Hulk Hogan and a Coco Ware. You understand? To me, they were both wrestlers. Ergo, they were both stars. Ergo,
Right.
they're doing what I want to do.
Right.
Right. So I didn't see the difference in that. And the same thing here. Same thing with this situation. Like even though these guys were local and there was no way in hell they were going to WWE probably or
No.
anything like that. But to me, they were wrestlers.
They were part of this thing.
They were part of this thing, and they were doing it. They were in a ring and they were punching and kicking and getting thrown over the. Well, I don't know if they got thrown over the top or not. I don't really remember, but I remember.
Yeah.
I remember Mr. Paradise's punches, very vividly.
All right. Okay. I do, before I stray too far up on a tangent, I want to try to bring us back a little bit to this promo in particular, because it stuck out. And I kind of mentioned how I hope people study it. And so I'll try to make my case for that. There were some things that they did in this that stuck out to me, and see how you feel about them. The first and foremost thing, and this is where I get to praise MJF a little bit, because I do think he does a good job at what he does. The first thing he did, and this is fan service. We've talked a little bit about appealing to the fans. Frequently throughout this event, he would stop and acknowledge and occasionally talk directly to the audience.
Yeah.
As someone who's a member of the audience, I appreciate that significantly, and it's something that is a clear distinction from what I see in the WWE.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I really did love about the promo was his explanation of the second city. You know what I mean?
That was great.
That was perfect. You know what I mean? Like it's not because we're second best or because of this or that. It's because we built.
We rebuilt the
we
city.
rebuilt the city on the embers of the whatever he said.
After it burned to the ground, we built right back.
Yeah.
The kind of
Yeah.
and to me that's very babyface.
Yeah.
Oh, it's huge. And like MJF, he would have lines, and this is something I don't know if WWE talent's allowed to do this, but he would stop delivering his lines if he noticed the crowd was reacting.
Yeah.
We mentioned the Miz line. He was about to deliver another line, and I'm trying to remember something about memory being a drug, something of that nature, that, clouds our memory. And he had this little clever line he had crafted, I'm sure. But as he was beginning to deliver it, the crowd started to chant Miz. They had heard CM Punk, and it resonated with them. It resonated with me, and I did like the camera crew. I don't know how they did this really well. As soon as CM Punk delivered that line, they cut to a lady in the audience, and she understood what CM Punk said very well, and she reacted on her face, and you can see on her face, oh, that, burn, whatever you want to say.
Right.
And so she put over what he said as well as anybody could. But when the crowd began chanting Miz at him, he stopped. And I'll go on and bring up what I was going to say. I'm going to ask you, is there, in your opinion, such a thing as verbal selling?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do it all the time. Like you said, the thing where MJF stopped and reacted to the people and things like that, that's part of that too. You know what I mean? You want to make sure that you enunciate the words you are, doing certain things, saying things in a certain order sometimes is very important too. Do you feel though, like, and this is kind of me just watching it, it felt like, okay, yeah, zinger after zinger after zinger after zinger. Did it not feel like it was choreographed?
Well, it was kind of like, I won't want to say like a debate where each side gets a turn, because CM Punk stood in the corner at the beginning without a microphone in his hand and allowed MJF to go through his little oration.
Yeah.
And I did like, he waited to all of that, and then he very quietly said, I'm disappointed in you.
Yeah.
And so what he was doing was he was minimizing everything MJF said, which is a good, if you're in a debate, he kind of minimized all those points, although there was a lot of truth in them. And MJF did some other things in there too. But I did like MJF, when they did the Miz line, by his face, he acknowledged that kind of stung him a little bit, and acknowledging the crowd referencing.
Yeah.
And then MJF had the line about saying, I'm surprised someone with that straight edge could look so much like a meth addict.
Yeah, I mean,
Even CM Punk, he wasn't, now I believe he did not know that was coming.
I don't think they knew any of those.
And so he hit him with that line, and CM Punk even kind of chuckled a little bit, and he kind of on his lips, you kind of read him saying, no, that's okay, that's a good one or something. And he was acknowledging, and it was, because CM Punk's appearance has been criticized for years, and that was kind of what he was getting at. He referred to him as the tatted up whatever guy. Uh, and so I appreciate him doing that. But CM Punk registered, hey, that that struck me a little bit. And so I thought that's something that people could learn when they do promos, where they're not just reciting their lines.
Well, they can still recite lines and still do the two things you're talking about though. Like The Rock is really good at that. Like
Absolutely.
he's gonna let you talk because he's The Rock and he's gonna fucking be over at the end of the thing anyway. So he's gonna let you say whatever it is you want to say, and then he's gonna retort. So that's basically what Punk was doing here. He let MJF have the floor, and then well, this is my side of it. Now, as far as like obviously, yeah, you react to the people. You want everything heard, right? So if you're cutting a promo and something gets a reaction, but then you continue to talk, then they're not going to hear that next line. So you recognize that reaction and you play to it, and then you go back to your line. But to me, it just some of the stuff felt like I said. It was zinger after zinger. It just felt like it was designed to do what it did. Does that make sense? Like it didn't come off to me like legitimate um, or like a true like verbal jousting. It just came off like this is television, and we're gonna get all the smart marks to love this. So
Okay.
I'm gonna reference the Miz. I'm gonna reference, you marrying Tony Khan's daughter. Like Triple H, and what I mean. It just felt like it was just like one thing after another.
All right. And I do want to acknowledge for those who didn't listen, MJF never mentioned people by name. If he referenced Cena, he would talk about hustle, loyalty, respect. You can't see me, guy. He wouldn't use the name, or he used King of Kings for Triple H, etc. and so forth. So he didn't say the name, but everybody knows what he means. And
I think it's almost worse using his moniker. I mean, he's basically putting over their monikers too. I mean,
okay. And I guess the big concern, the thing that I did have a concern about this, and I guess our time probably is drawing short. Um, the the thing, I guess, kind of the scale I always go by is Paul Heyman quoted Dusty Rhodes during the time he was in WCW. Dusty Rhodes asked him a question after one of his promos, and the question was, "Where is the money?" And that kind of became a standard for judging whether or not a promo was effective. Because regardless of what you say and how entertaining it is and how sick the burn is or whatever you want to call it, ultimately, how does this turn into money?
right.
Now, because there is no scheduled match between the two as of yet, I think it kind of gave me concern. But I do want to say, if and when they schedule a match between these two, I would certainly be willing to buy a ticket to see it. Is that fair? And do you think that the money, although maybe not there now, will be there as a result of this promo?
I think I think the money was there before anything ever happened. I remember I said a couple weeks ago that, or when Punk came back, I said his first program should have been with MJF because that's what everyone wanted to see anyway, right? Now here we are, 6 weeks later, and we're in it. But like I said, I think he should have started there. So um, now, one of the things too is, you know, like I said, I just feel like they spent way too much time establishing WWE. We've had a situation here in Dyersburg for years where there was another wrestling company 5 minutes away from me. You know what I mean? It would make absolutely even though I didn't like them or I didn't like this or I didn't like that, it would make bad business sense on my part to go in the ring and just start referencing them. No matter how cool it was or what kind of reaction it got online and that kind of thing. Just acknowledging them might help them in the long run. Like there's plenty of my fans here that probably don't even know that they existed. But if I mention them, they're like, "What is he talking about?" And then like they do a little research and oh, there's another company down there. We'll go check them out one night, and that's money I lose. You know what I mean? So like when he says you're a less famous Miz, even though we're in our head we're thinking, well, everybody knows who the Miz is already, but there may be some AEW fans out there that don't, that are just AEW fans. You know what I mean? And like they may go, oh, who's this Miz? And they go look at some of the Miz's stuff, and then all of a sudden they're a fan of the Miz. And then you've created a star for them.
I suppose I cannot rule that out completely. Although
I've lived this before. I know what I'm...
I think these are very different because when you're talking about at a national level, because basically we're talking about television audience, and among television audiences, if someone tunes in to the AEW television show, it is very, very, very likely they're aware of the WWE television show. If anything, it'd be much. To me, it works a lot worse in reverse.
Yeah, or it works either way.
Well,
but the problem is, I don't know how to explain it. That the you're just spending time, putting someone else over. You know what I mean? Like we always talk, television time is so crucial. You know what I mean? Like there's only finite amount of time in a television program, and if you got let's say 45 minutes an hour, so an hour and a half worth of actual television time, and they spent 20 minutes talking about WWE, you know what I mean? That's a huge chunk of their television time.
yeah, I understand. I still, you have not swayed me yet. I still thought it is okay because ultimately this is going to, I think this is going to build over several weeks. Obviously, they avoid the physical contact this week, but I think that's going to build. And I kind of suspect they have an upcoming event on January 8th, I think. I kind of think something like that. They could do it. There's a Winter is Coming, which is just a special edition of the television show. They could do it there, but I kind of think they're doing a Saturday night special. Now, that stuck out to me is it may be their attempt to do their own Clash of the Champions. Because they refer to it as like Battle of the Belts or something. And to me, it's a very clear reference to Clash of the Champions coming up in early January. And so I think they may do that because the next pay-per-view, I think, is not till late February, early March. And I don't think they'll carry this out that far.
They might.
They could, but I don't know that they will. And if they don't, that might be, so they might be building to that point. But in any event, I did not see, well, and particularly because a lot of the references they made to WWE are people who are not on the program anymore. Triple H is not there. John Cena is not there. The Miz is still under contract, but I think he still off doing Dancing with the Stars or something? I don't think he's regularly on television at the moment. And so I thought it was the people in the crowd that it was designed to appeal to, the people like me who are going to buy the tickets and the T-shirts and all those things.
That we're going to do that anyway.
Not necessarily. And I need to be careful because I did not, when AEW first started, I was not near as all in as I am now. Pardon the use of the pun there, I guess. I was not as all in as I am now. They have won me over over time because we've acknowledged the viewpoint of, say, Omega and the Bucks and the way they present wrestling is not my favorite. But over time, I have seen improvement. And, well, I guess, for instance, I would encourage people to watch. Billy Gunn had a match with Darby Allin. And it was a chance for nonsense to break out. And this was on Rampage, I think it was a week ago. And I thought it was a very well done match for what they were trying to do. And I would encourage people to look at that and just see how they did it. And to me, I want to credit Billy Gunn. I thought Billy Gunn, it really to me looked like, he kind of took the lead in that match, in my opinion. And I think he was heavily involved in the way that match was structured. And I think it was done in a tremendously well.
Yeah, if they would listen to all the veterans there. I mean, you got Billy Gunn and Dustin and, Big Show and Mark Henry. Right. I mean, there's just so much. There's a wealth of knowledge there, but are they going to listen? I don't think Omega's going to listen. I don't think the Bucks are going to listen. You know what I mean? Billy Gunn, like we said, Billy Gunn, 58 years old, and look how amazing he looks. Like I knew, like I looked it up the other day because when I saw him, I was like, shit, he's
incredible.
He's in incredible shape, and I was like, I thought he was like 53, 54. No, he's almost 60.
Mm-hmm.
Very near 60, and he's in that kind of shape. So that's super impressive. So yes, we are over time.
Okay.
We're at 30. We're gonna be at 35 minutes by the time this thing ends. But for myself, the Golden Boy Greg Anthony, and my co-host, Maximum Overdrive, Mark Tipton, thank you and goodbye.